What is up, YouTube? HPJ here, and today I'll be coming at you guys as I take a look at the virus archetype. The viruses known in the OCG as deck destruction viruses, are a cumulative of trap cards that are used in the Yu-Gi-Oh! Anime and manga under the control of Seto Kaiba, and later on in the Yu-Gi-Oh! Rain series under Clarissa Turner. These are some very nasty cards that infect your opponent from the outside in, leading them completely weakened by the fact that this card absorbs the nutrients in the very soul of the deck itself, rendering your opponent useless of all of their monsters, their spells, and traps. The virus cards made their first TCG and OCG appearance within Premier Pack 5. This is after its long-awaited setup for its first member, Crush Card Virus, who starts off as a Shonen Jump prize card. Due to the limitations that the Shonen Jump prize cards were at that time, the deck devastation virus itself, Crush Card virus itself, had to wait until Premium Pack 5 to get printed worldwide, as well as Gold Series, which, ironically enough, both were out around the same time. It wasn't until Flames of Eternity where more members accumulated themselves then the accumulated sets of crossovers, Crimson Chaos, Raging Rampage, the TCG's reprint of Duelist Genesis, Structure Deck Kaiba, Starter Pack Kaiba, Duelist Pack Kaiba, Premium Gold Series, no, Gold Series 4, Gates of the Dark World, and Lair of Darkness, just to include some of the TCG and OCG equivalents. Now, if you do not know more of the history of these cards, the cumulative effects of many of these cards are such as follows. They are all normal trap cards except for their manga versions. This ability is that they attribute a monster to meet a certain requirement, most likely a dark attributed monster. Upon the resolution of the cards, they do certain effects that render similar to a virus, where it kills you from the outside in. And then for 3 turns upon the activation of said card, there are lingering effects, even to the except for the majority of what happened to Crush Card, which I will get into when we talk about Crush Card itself. The TCG prints of the virus cards accumulate these cards with the alphabetical setup from C to G, meaning that Crush Card Virus with the letter C, Deck Devastation Virus with the letter D, Eradicating Epidemic Virus with the letter E, Full Force Virus with the letter F, and Grivstar Virus. Let's hope I'm saying that right. Grimming Grave Virus with the letter G. There are a cumulative of here and there virus cards as well, but because we're going to keep this primarily to just the specifics of the deck destruction virus cards, since they're known as that in the LCG, we're only going to accumulate to those in the associated cards around. Also note to the fact that there's some lore connecting the virus cards to the demon lord cards in the Yu-Gi-Oh series. For Lilith, the Lady of Ligment is associated with Crush Card Virus. The Lich Lord, who is the king of the underworld, also associated with Crush Card for their cumulative eye colors in the background of Lich Lord is also cumulative to Crush Card viruses. There is Diabolos, the king of the abyss, who is associated with Deck Devastation virus. Prometheus, the king of shadows, eradicating epidemic virus, which I think believes to share the holds of the shadows themselves. The Duke of Shades and Full Force virus have their accumulative association. And then there is Amra, the King of Wickedness, and Grimming Grave virus. The only virus card to not have anything accumulated in terms of a Demon Lord is the Last Machine Acid virus, and that's only accumulated to Acid Slime, which is a manga exclusive card, and it's, ironically enough, Water Aqua type. It has nothing to do with a demon lord or anything. I think it has to just due to the fact that the demon lords themselves created plagues and viruses upon the dual monsters world, and associated with the viruses themselves or their abilities that associated with exactly what their effects were. So, while we have that nice trip through memory lane, why don't we go ahead and we talk about memory lane, starting off with the first of the virus cards, and that is Crush Card Virus, known in the OCG as the Deck Destruction Virus of Death. Its original effect reads from the actual physical card. Tribute one dark monster with 1000 or less attack. Check all monsters your opponent controls in your opponent's hand and all cards that they draw until the end of the third turn after this card's activation. And destroy all monsters with 15 or more attack. This is the original Crush Card Virus look when it was officially printed for um, for the OCG and TCG in terms of its release. It wasn't until its return to the Yu-Gi-Oh series, where they completely nerfed this card and gave it an errata due to the fact that this was the first and the only one of the virus cards to ever be forbidden. This card has a lot of great setup with a lot of decks in the past, especially a lot of them that any deck that utilize dark monsters and can take advantage, of course, of hurting other monsters by simply tributing monsters like Sangan, for example, to basically rid your opponent of their highest statted monsters in terms of attack. Now, in the original anime, where we know this card to be, this card in Seto Kaiba's deck was that you target one dark monster you control with 1000 or less attack. If it was destroyed while it had 1000 or less attack, destroy all monsters from your opponent's control in their hand and in their deck with 15 or more attack. This is a strategy Kaiba used as a way to deal with his opponent's most destructive monsters, as a way to make it where they had to use only the weakest of cards they had access to. While Crush Card Virus, not Deck Debbie, that we'll talk about that soon, did a lot of destruction for these high strength monsters. Kaiba did showcase this card many of times. His duel against Yugi, where it left um, Yugi's deck vulnerable to it, and he unfortunately couldn't use many of the monsters that he would like to use, such as the Summon Skull, uh, that were completely rendered useless thanks to this card's ability. It was also his duel against Ishizu, where he took on a double virus setup between this card and virus Canon to rid Ishizu of not only all of her spells and traps, but to rid her of her monsters that she later turned the tables on Kaiba with by using Exchange of the Spirits. Not only ridding Crush Card's effect null and void, but returning to her everything she lost in the graveyard during that duel by simply swapping her deck for her grave, leaving swapping Kaiba for his very low minimum graveyard and his very high potent deck, all completely useless to him. He did use this strategy again against Joey, where he rid Joey of all his strong monsters, only to have it kind of somewhat backfire later on, where Kaiba forgot that Monster Reborn was a thing and that your graveyard was accessible. Yeah. So, and then there was also the last accumulated duel that we've seen Kaiba use Crush Card. That was his duel against one of the members of the Archetypes, where we were introduced to the only monster that this archetype holds, and that is Doom Virus Dragon, known in the OCG as Death Virus Dragon. Requirements: 1 Fang of Gridius and Crush Card Virus. Dark attributed dragon type fusion monster, level 4 with 1900 attack and 1500 defense. Must be special summoned with the Fang of Gridius, cannot while using Crush Card Virus. If this card is special summoned, look at your opponent's hand, all monsters they control and all cards they draw until the third turn after this card's effect activated. Destroy all those monsters with 15 or more attack. This is the only remnant of the original Crush Card Virus's effect to still be active. Sadly enough, it's attached to an effect monster. But for good reason, because the trap card variation looks more destructive, is which you can just tribute that dark monster and then play around um, with other utilities attached to it. This monster, ironically enough, only came years later after the original Crush card itself got forbidden. When this card was released, they actually unbanned Crush Card Virus, giving it the weaker of its effects, only to make it to where it wasn't such a destructive force to be reckoned with. The Crush Card Virus itself being one of the few cards in the Shonen Jump prize cards to actually be forbidden, next to Cyberstein, who was also later on unbanned for the OCG and TCG. There's not much to really say about Crush Card itself. It's still in cumulative. One of the best trap cards from the original series, and it still does a lot of its own destruction, depending on how you use it and whatever deck it chooses to be. The kanji on this card is the symbol of death, which is why I believe the TCG's original print tried to hide it. It wasn't until Duelist Pack Kaiba where this card became an ultimate rare, and they showcased the kanji on this card. Now, with all of that said and done, why don't we go ahead and we talk about the next of the virus cards. And that is Deck Devastation Virus, known in the OCG as Deck Destruction Virus of the Devil. Its effect reads: you tribute one dark attributed monster with 2,000 or more attack. You look at your opponent's hand, all monsters they control, and all cards they draw until the third turn after this card's activation. You'll destroy all monsters with 15 or less attack. The kanji on this card is in the symbol of the word demon, for that includes that it takes a demon's touch to take advantage of this card. Devastation Virus itself is a polar opposite in terms of what Crush Card initially was. This card requires a monster who has double the attack points of the monster needed for Tribute and Crush Card Virus. While this card takes the polar opposite of destroying monsters with 15 or less attack, Crush Card Virus took the opposite to destroy monsters with 15 or more attack. So it'd be a nasty combination to run into both of these. There isn't much history behind the Deck Devastation Virus, as it is one of the cumulative cards that you honestly don't have much problems. You don't really see too much of. It was one of the few of the virus cards to be limited, as the other being Eradicator Epidemic Virus and Crush Card for its time of being released. This card also was featured as one of the few cards in the Yu-Gi-Oh game series to be part of the cover of a actual set. For alongside the Sacred Phoenix of Nephthys, Deck Devastation Virus was featured on the cover of Flames of Eternity alongside it. This also means the fact that Labyrinth of Nightmare had Mask of Restrict, and Last Turn was featured on Legacy of Darkness. Also, associated to itself, DDV, in terms of its short terms, are separated due to the fact that it would not be considered a virus card if it continued to have been quoted to DDV. And its Japanese name is, of course, in a reference to the to Diabolos, the king of the abyss, for Diabolos himself was a demon dragon lord, and he was the controller of the shadows. Of darkness, not shadows. Alright, moving on. We have the next card up, and that is the card that symbolizes E, because I forgot to mention that Devastation Virus associates itself with the letter D in the TCG, giving it the D virus. Haha, jokes. Anyway, Eradicated Epidemic Virus, known in the OCG as Deck Destruction Virus of. Oh, I'm sorry. This. Hold on one second. Yeah, Eradicate Epidemic Virus, known in the OCG as Deck Destruction Virus of Darkness. You tribute one dark monster with with 2,500 or more attack. You declare one type, spell, or trap. You look at your opponent's hand, all spells and trap cards they control, and all cards that they draw until their third turn after this card's activation. You destroy all cards of that type. Being the second of the now being the third of the card viruses to be limited, the Eradicate Epidemic virus led your opponent to literally have no access to spells or traps, depending on which one you chose. This card accumulates the letter E in the series, and the kanji on this card is in the reference to darkness. For the symbol on it is Yami, meaning darkness. Some more history about the Eradicator epidemic virus is that in the Italian release of Force of the Breaker, this card actually had a misprint and a total misprint of 38, where I believe there was an issue with the card's print, not the actual card itself, and that Prometheus, the King of Shadows, gives a reference to this card in his Japanese. His Japanese name gives a reference to him in its original name, being that it is the deck destruction virus of darkness. We move on and we have Full Force Virus, known in the OCG as Deck Destruction Virus of Shadows. Its effect reads: you tribute one dark monster with 2,000 or more defense. You check your opponent's hand, all monsters they control, and all cards they draw until the third turn of this card's activation after being activated to destroy all those monsters that have 15 or less defense. So this card being the complete opposite of Crush Card Virus, where Crush Card affected attack and defense, the effects of Full Force Virus affects their defensive points. This is the fourth member of the card series to feature the letter F. The Japanese name for this card, as well as Crush Card Virus, were given the terms of death, which ironically enough had to be changed and altered for their TCG release. The kanji on this card is in the simulations of Shadow, which is Kage. This monster's OCG name gives reference to the Duke Shade, the King of Umbra, which is known as the King of Shadows, for Umbra meaning is also a reference to the word shadows itself. We move on to the next card, and that is Grinning Grave Virus, known in the OCG as Evil Deck Destruction Virus. Its effect reads: you tribute one dark monster with 3,000 or less attack. Your opponent destroys one card of their choice from their hand or deck with for every 500 attack that monster had. If you tribute a monster with 2,000 or more attack to activate this card's effect, look at all cards your opponent draws until the end of their third turn of that card's activation. Destroy all monsters among them. Destroy cards and send cards to the graveyard by this effect. Cannot activate their own effects during the same turn. So the card artwork of this card has the symbol on it, meaning the word evil. This is the last of the original cards to be featured with the series letters of G in its TCG release. This card also pays homage to Armia, the Wicked Warden, for the fact that this card is evil and has the evil symbols attached to it. Next up are the more modern anime cards. This is the current Corrupt Virus, known in the OCG as Current Hack Virus. Tribute one dark monster with 0 defense. Until the end of your opponent's third turn after the activation of this card, you can change the attack of all monsters your opponent controls with 2,000 or less defense. They all have their effects negated, and all monsters in your opponent's hand cannot activate their effects. It's a really nasty thing to run into. This is one of the few cards that's actually used by Kelsey Turner in the Yu-Gi-Oh! Rings anime. Also to note, the second card up is the Root is the root rams virus, known in the OCG as root hack virus. Its effect is that you tribute one dark monster with 0 attack. Change the attack of all link monsters on the field to 0, and also have their effects negated. Each time a link monster is link summoned while this card is in your graveyard, you change the attack of all link monsters on the field to 0, and also their effects are negated. During the end of your opponent's second turn after this card was activated, no, was sent to the graveyard, you banish it. This is a way to accumulate strategies against link monsters. Sadly enough, Groom Grave Virus and its counterpart, Root Ram Virus, do not have a TCG print, but both of these cards do look amazing in artwork and have a similar artwork to each other. While this one's in pink and purple, this one is blue and purple. Then we move on to Virus Canon. This card, known in the OCG as Dispel Germ Weapon, also translated itself to Magical Removing Bacterial Weapon, has the effect of tributing any number of monsters except tokens. Your opponent sends any number of spells from their deck to the graveyard. If they have fewer spells less than the monster's tribute, they send all spells to the graveyard. This is not its original effect. This is actually the modified effect for it when this card became a physical card in the trading card game. For in the anime, Virus Canon had the simple ability of your opponent sends 10 spell cards from their hand or deck to the graveyard. This was first used against Ishizu Ishtar in the Yu-Gi-Oh anime, while Seto Kaiba has this card in his deck to basically rid her of any hopes that she could use against him. This card was also featured in the first Yu-Gi-Oh movie, The Pyramid of Light, where Kaiba used this in his duel against Yugi to try to render Yugi's deck completely useless as well. Fun fact, this was a spell card in the anime, while physically it's a card that is a physical trap card. We have the other video game exclusive card. This is the Last Machine Acid Virus. Tribute one water monster. Check all monsters your opponent controls in your hand and on their side, and as they draw until the turn until your opponent's third turn after this card's activation. Destroy all machine type monsters. Would be a great counter for machine type decks, but ironically enough, it's a water soluble card, so you're not to use water or such things. Which I think water wouldn't mind too much of that. This is the only video game exclusive virus card. Does not have a physical print. And funny enough, like I said, if I haven't said it already, the association with this card has nothing to do with any demons or demon lords. This actually has association with the water monster that is known as liquid slime, which you do see. Which you do see in this card's artwork. Which it's a level 3 water attributed monster, 800 attack, 500 defense, and its effect reads when tribute this card to the graveyard for an effect, you inflict 500 points of damage to your opponent. I cannot find the card yet, but I'm sure it's somewhere around here. But yeah, and then we have the anime exclusive card, Vaccination. As an equipped spell, you can target one face-up monster you control and equip it to this card. Then place one vaccine counter on the equipped monster. Monsters with vaccine counters are unaffected by virus cards, and if the equipped monster is tributed for a tribute summon or is sent to the graveyard for a fusion summon, you may quit this card to the tribute summon or fusion summon monster and place one virus counter on it. This is the only quote counter to the virus cards themselves, and I wouldn't be surprised if this card was somehow in Yugi's deck as a way to counteract Kaiba's shenanigans with Crush Card Virus. Thing is that injection series that on this card is actually the monster Mystical Elf. And I'm pretty sure the TCG would definitely have to censor this due to the fact that it kind of looks like she's riding that vaccine uh, very seductively. Anyway, that is pretty much the end of today's archetype video, and I'm sure many of you are very excited that I got the chance to talk about Crush Card Virus. So, let me know what you guys think of the virus cards, and I hope you guys enjoyed this video overall. Don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe to the channel as it helps out tremendously. You can also hit me up on social media as the social media links are in the description box below. And of course, Patreon is up if you like to support the channel. You definitely can. It's your choice. And with all that said and done, I will catch you all next time. HPJ signing out. Take care.